Hey everybody. So we're going to begin by talking about the epidermis. So this is the first layer that we're going to talk about with the skin. It is the top layer of the skin. Before we go into detail about the layers within the layers of the skin, it is very important to mention that there are three distinct layers of the skin, as you see in this image here. Real quickly, what I can show you is, if you follow this line, it's not the best line in the world. But the point is, we're talking about everything above this, all right, including this dark line right here. So we are going to be talking about that and everything above it. So this is the epidermis. So just like most things in this course, you're going to find that once you feel like you're comfortable with something, there's more to it. So in this case, we're looking at the epidermis, which is this layer of skin. So it's just the top layer of skin. But if you notice here, there are multiple layers to this top layer of skin. So it's not just one layer of skin. There are multiple components to it that make up the epidermis. So if we look into the slideshow, we are going to be learning about the 5 layers of the epidermis, starting from the bottom. And we're going to move from the bottom to the top. All right, so keep that in mind. We are going from the bottom to the top in these slides. So, beginning with the bottom, we're going to see this one is called the Stratum Basale layer. This is the very bottom part of the epidermis. This layer of the skin is just a single layer of columnar cells that rests on the basement membrane of this layer. So in other words, this is the layer that is going to be basically touching the dermis below the epidermis. So this is the very bottom layer of the epidermis. This layer is very important for a few reasons. One of those reasons is the fact that it is important for cell division so that we create more of these cells. So something we're going to learn about in the epidermis is that the cell factory that creates all of the cells are in this layer, and as they grow, they're going to divide and they're going to be pushed upwards. So they're going to keep going up. Do a better image of this. They're going to go upwards. So in other words, this layer here is the oldest layer of the cells. These are the newest layers, and they're going to be pushed upwards. So that said, what are we going to notice in here? What are they making? Is it just cells? Is it other things that go with it? What kind of cells are they? So we're going to begin right here. Remember, if you ever see cyte, that means this is a type of cell. All right, keratinocytes, these are going to create keratin. All right, so this is going to be where all the keratinocytes, the cells that make the keratin, are going to be created. Along with that, we're going to get the melanocytes. Melanocytes are super important because they're going to create the pigment melanin, which many of us may be familiar with. Melanin is the pigment within our skin. This is what's going to make people either lighter skinned or darker skinned. It's the melanocytes. One thing to keep important, it is not the number of melanocytes, it is how much distance the melanocytes really take up. So these cells are very strange looking. I believe I have an image of them, but real quick, the melanocytes are kind of like, I should probably draw, are kind of like a structure, but they have like these long tails that come off and that branch off them and they interact with the cells. The longer these tails are, the more cells they're able to interact with and the more of the pigment they can release. Not the best image, but that's the idea. Next up are Merkel cells. Merkel cells are the cells that are used for detecting senses. So in other words, your tactile responses, your tactile senses. So you ever notice you could feel things when you touch them? So that's because the Merkel cells that are located in the epidermis, again, in the epidermis down here, are contacting the nerve cells in the dermis. So in other words, the sensation in the nerve cells are actually located in the dermal layer, but these Merkel cells are what communicate with those cells in the dermis. So without these Merkel cells, we would not have communication with the nerve cells down in the dermis. The next layer above is the Stratum Spinosum. So this is the spiny layer. This is going to be made up of several flattened keratinocytes, which are going to shrink as they are continued to be pushed up through the layers of the skin. Not only that, you're going to see macrophages down here. Their specialized name that we give them are Langerhans cells, and they're going to be very important for the immune system. Next up, yes, this is also where mitosis is going to occur to create more of those cells. The stratum granulosum is a very thin layer that's going to consist of 2 to 5 layers of the of the cells, and you're going to see more living cells within this area. So this is another layer of those cells. The next layer, fourth layer, is called the stratum lucidium. This is a translucent layer of skin, and it's not located everywhere in your body. So believe it or not, we do have thick skin and thin skin. You may have noticed that with places like maybe your hands. You notice you have thicker parts to it. Maybe places like the soles of your feet, there's thicker skin there. The reason that that skin feels or appears thicker than other parts of the skin is because of this stratum lucidum layer. So you're only going to see it in the thick skin areas. All other parts of the skin where you might consider it thin skin, basically everywhere else, are only going to have 4 layers. The first 3 layers we discussed, as well as this 5th layer, the stratum corneum. The stratum corneum is going to be the very top part, the part that people tend to think about when they think about the epidermis. These are very thin layers of squamous epithelium that are dead and have keratin within them. So that means they are stronger, they are waterproofing, and they're on their way out. So this is the very top layer, and they are going to be falling off all the time. So whether they're being killed off or they're already dead at this point, so falling off or being scratched off or however they're going to leave the body. So this is the top layer of those dead skin cells. So this, once again, is the image, and you can see all the different layers of the epidermis. Again, this is the epidermis we just discussed. Next video, we'll talk about everything below this line. And we're going to talk about the dermis. If you have any questions, please let me know.